Hi, I'm Colin Morgan from Merlin, and you're watching The Ugly Card Show.
Given all the variations of the Arthurian mythos, what made you decide to go in the direction you did with the show?
We love the Arthurian legend. The Arthurian legend hadn't been on British television for a long time. We thought it was ripe for reinvention for a 21st century audience, and we were huge fans of Smallville at the time. And we thought, well, nobody has actually told the story, before it happened, before they were famous. So we just started out telling the story of just a young Merlin. And then gradually, as we developed the idea of a young Merlin, we then thought, well, why don't we put in young Arthur, young Guinevere, young Morgana? So the story sort of kind of grew out from that. But in a way, we just felt that nobody had really told the story of a young Merlin, so that kind of really excited us. And I think it's also good to tell a story of, a young person with extraordinary powers that has to hide that. And that, again, was something that was exciting to us as storytellers.
With Morgana being taken by Morgals, will we see more of her? Will we see her return as an enemy at Camelot this season?
Morgana returns in the beginning of Series 3. The first 2 episodes is a 2-parter. And it's the story of how Morgana is discovered. And we learn very quickly about what happened to her in that year. And then we learn about her allegiances.
Do you find it challenging to always have to make Merlin's magic remain a secret?
I think that's always a challenge, but I mean that's part of the format of the show, and it's always really good fun to find new ways that Arthur doesn't discover that Merlin has magic, and it's a classic kind of he's the unsung hero, so it's part of the format of the show that he has to constantly find clever ways of hiding his magic. So it's a challenge, but the format is so strong that we never run out of ideas of how he hides his magic.
Can we expect to see more of the Gwen, Arthur, Lancelot story this season?
Oh, definitely. I mean, that's a major arc through throughout all of the series. And in Series 3, you see a lot more of the relationship between Arthur and Guinevere, and Lancelot makes a surprise appearance as well.
Can we expect to see more of the characters from Legend during the next season?
Yes, we do. I mean, the great thing about the show is that we can reboot all those legends. So we bring in a lot more of the Knights of the Round Table. So we bring in Gawain and Percival. Lancelot, as says, come back. We set up the concept of the Lady in the Lake, so she comes back into Series 3. So there's lots of Arthurian legends, and those characters that we bring back, and introduce.
Is this your first time at Comic-Con?
Yes, it is.
What do you think of the response that you've gotten?
Well, so far we haven't seen how many people are going to be filling the 2,000-seater stadium, so hopefully there'll be more than about 5 people. It won't be just incredibly embarrassing, but it's great. I mean, it's always really exciting. You make these shows because you want to appeal to a really broad audience and an international audience, and the fact that Merlin has not only worked in this country but in 180 territories, which is a phenomenal success, and so Julian and I are thrilled that it's worked, and it's great that people appreciate your show, and you work so hard at making Merlin work. I mean, it took us 3 years to develop it, and so the fact that it was a success was huge, because nobody likes to be part of a failure, but the fact that this show worked in England and throughout the world is terrific. So coming to these events is always great, and to see people dressed as Merlin or Arthur is kind of really sort of great, and that kind of commitment from fans is fantastic.
One last question: if you came to con as a fan, what would you like to see here?
Who would I see, or who would I dress up as?
Either one.
Well, I saw somebody dressed from the 300 today in a pair of red pants and a cloak. So I think...
You would do that?
No, I wouldn't do that. No, sadly I don't have a six-pack. No, I think who would I want to dress up as? I think I'd be Yoda.
Okay, thanks very much. Thank you. Given all the variations of the Arthurian mythos, what made you decide to go in the direction you did with the show?
Well, we wanted to do something different. That's the first thing to say. There have been many versions of this legend, and many very good ones. And we thought if we were going to tackle it, we wanted to bring our own take to it. I suppose myself and Johnny, my co-creator, we've always been fascinated by stories of coming-of-age stories, and stories of male friendship, young male friendship. I think it's a very interesting area to us. We've done a lot of teen drama, like As If and Sugar Rush. So we naturally gravitated towards making the legend more the story of them growing up, and less the story of them being legendary kings and figures and fully formed, because it allows us to take Arthur from being a not very good king and teaching him how to be a great king, and watching that process.
With Morgana being taken by Morgals, will we see her return as an enemy at Camelot this season?
Who knows? She will return. She will return, and she will have changed. And that's as much as I'm prepared to say.
Do you find it challenging to always have to make Merlin's magic a secret?
Yes, we do. It is difficult to do that because you're constantly aware that the audience will ask the question, well, why didn't they notice that? Why didn't they? On the other hand, if you took away it being a secret, you would take away a lot of the humour, a lot of the pathos of his situation, the fact that he does all these things and no one acknowledges him, the fact that he has to be the hero but nobody accepts that he's the hero, and he always gets put down by Arthur despite all the great things he does. And that's the key of the series, and we can't change that.
Can we expect to see more of the Gwen, Arthur, Lancelot story this season?
Yes, Lancelot comes back, and yes, Gwen and Arthur's relationship develops. That's quite a big part of it, yeah.
Can we expect to see more characters from the legend this season?
Yes. Who do we bring in? We bring in a new knight, Gawain, who's based on the Gawain of Arthurian legend, who's a great character actually. And he's not a knight when he comes in, but he will ultimately become one. There's lots of Arthurian bits in this. We see the sword come from the lake. We see the beginnings of the Round Table, all sorts of things.
Is this your first Comic-Con?
It is my first Comic-Con. We do a similar thing in the UK, but it's nothing like this big, so it's fantastic actually.
What do you think of the response so far?
It's been great. I mean, this is amazing for us. When you make these shows, you dream of them reaching a wide audience. It doesn't often happen, and to have an audience, like this, to come to a place like this where there's so many passionate people is very special.
And if you were here as a fan, what would you like to see most at Con?
Oh, there's so many shows I'd like to see here, but probably the show I'm biggest fan of here is True Blood. But I'm sure I'm not alone in that.
No, you're not. Well, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Was it challenging for you to undertake a role with such history and varying interpretations?
Yes, although actually what they know about Uther is fairly limited. In terms of legend, he's largely known as a womanizer and a carouser. So that's kind of easy to play. No, what was the interesting challenge was to make somebody who is, by and large, just the bad guy, the guy that sort of is the thing to kick against, into someone human who has a pathology, who has a reason for doing, whether it's a right reason or a wrong reason, he thinks he's justified. Most humans think they're justified for what they do, and somewhere down the line they may not have thought it through, and they go, oh, those are the repercussions. Oh, that sucks. But Uther is gradually finding out not everything he did was the brightest move.
What's been your favorite storyline so far of the series?
I loved episode 8 of season 2, basically when Arthur is confronted by the ghost of his mother, who tells him one version of the basically how she died, and he confronts me, and it was great. It was something that Johnny and Julian and I had talked about. It would be quite fun to have that moment of when the son fights the father, and there is that moment when suddenly the father realizes he's not quite as powerful as he once was, and he's handing the mantle over, and it manifested itself in this really telling story of basically Arthur trying to find out the truth about and is his father a liar, is his father a complete
where would you like to see Uther's story progress this season?
It's going where I would like it to. The turkeys are coming home to roost, fully basted. The repercussions of his actions are beginning to find him out.
Well, was it challenging for you to undertake a role with such history and varying interpretations?
Well, what's great about this version of Merlin is I get to put my own spin on it. We've seen Merlin in so many different situations before, in different portrayals, and we've never really seen a young Merlin before. So what's great is I get a chance to sort of do something that hasn't really been explored. So I've got a bit of free rein on it, really, which is great.
What's been your favorite storyline that so far this series?
On the second series, my favourite one had to be episode 13, The Last Dragon Lord, which was great because it just covered so much ground for Merlin as a character. It delved into his past, it did big changes for the future, and it left him at a point where he was changed forever. And that was definitely a great place for an actor and for the character to be.
What would you like to see happen for Merlin this season?
A lot of big things that I wanted to see happen to Merlin are happening, which is great. The writers are really pushing it, and that's that Merlin's becoming a bit more like the character and the legend of old, which is that wise advisor to Arthur. We're seeing him not just using his powers for the good, but using his words and the power of his words for Arthur. So you're seeing a more mature, more grown up Merlin kind of coming to the fore, but still with that quirkiness and that clumsiness, I guess, that he'll always have.
Are you given much rein to interpret Merlin in your own way?
Definitely, we're given a lot of free rein to really put your own spin on it and have fun with it. I think that's one of the important things, especially on something when you're filming for 8 months straight. You gotta have fun. You can't just slog it out the whole time. Yeah, we're given a chance to really put your own spin and have fun with it.
Was sci-fi fantasy always been something of interest to you, or was your Doctor Who role your first encounter with it?
No, I love the fantasy genre. I've always had a fascination with escapism, other worlds, possibilities that don't exist in real life that you can connect into, and with shows. So the fantasy genre seems to be really in at the minute as well, with shows like Heroes and True Blood that's really taken off, and when you can plug into something like that and zone out and do that, yeah, I love it. I'm a big fan of Terry Pratchett books. I was really into those whenever I was, and that was kind of my first taste of it.
Is this your first Comic-Con?
This is my first Comic-Con, and I'm really excited about it.
What are your first impressions?
Well, I haven't been in there yet, so we've just literally come in, through the back and been in a room and in here. So yeah, I'll find out on the other side.
And if you were here as a fan, what do you think you would like to see most at Comic-Con?
Well, I just heard that the whole Avengers cast were here, and that was something I would have loved to have seen, because I think that's a really exciting thing. That's something I would have loved to have seen. But I plan on going to see the throne from Thor. I've heard that's great, so that's my first point of call.